right, Troy, brother, what's up? Welcome back to the Unicorn Perspective. I was looking at our Skype messages back and forth, and so the last time I had you on was right before Christmas. So it's been a while, been a little bit of a minute
It's
there.
been a minute. Yeah, time flies. That was
Yeah,
a fun one. Happy to be on again.
and it's crazy. I feel like anytime even if it's only been like 3 or 6 months since I've chatted with people, it's things are moving so insanely fast, and it just seems to be moving faster and faster and faster. That there's always a ton of new and interesting stuff to talk about. Even just like, and we can just dive in here. There's so
Sure.
much that I want to like talk to you about. There's a lot of paths we can go down, but I'm curious, like at a kind of macro level, what you think of the boom in like digital products, right? Specifically, like NFTs are a big thing, but you have such a strong background in D2C and working with brands and physical products, right? And obviously, you have experience working, not just physical, right? But I'm curious if you see this as the question I asked a few people in the last few interviews is like 2017 Bitcoin, where it's super early adopters, lots of people that are kind of too early to the party that buy in, a lot of pump and dump, a lot of people are kind of hyping it up, and then it crashes, and then a few years go by and institutions come in and kind of the real players come in and it becomes a viable platform, or if you think like what we're seeing now is a real thing that is going to continue to build and grow and become a kind of permanent fixture of commerce.
Yeah, I mean, like everything in the digital world is growing. Like the last year just really accelerated everything. I mean, whether it's in direct consumer, whether it's in crypto, just people getting more like computer literate in general. Like anecdotally, like I see things like my grandmother who barely knows how to use her computer using Amazon consistently now. I see my parents who are a little more computer literate asking me, where do I buy Bitcoin? And then today they called me, where do I buy Doge? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's where we're going. So it's
Did you
been
tell them?
interesting to watch.
Just I'm curious. Did you tell them, or do you say like probably don't, like probably maybe hold off
I told
on some of
them
these
to buy
products?
it for them and just don't worry about it.
Yeah, I got you.
um, yeah, I wouldn't. I didn't want to bring them down that road. But yeah, I mean, it's been super interesting. It's been really cool to see because like obviously like everything has been more and more digital. Like and in society in general has been moving more towards digital. Like I got this is really random, but like I remember like I don't know, like it had to be like 12 years ago. I remember seeing at the end, like in the credits of a movie, like well, the trailer of a movie when I was in a movie theater, seeing look at our Facebook page and it had linked to their Facebook, and I thought that was the weirdest thing in the world that like a film was advertised with their Facebook. And now obviously Facebook is just the norm. Like everyone, like Facebook, Instagram, social media, just the norm is part of society. And I feel like that's where e-commerce is now finally, where just people are just used to buying online because if they hadn't been forced to do that, and crypto is getting more into the norm as well. Like seeing Bitcoin, like I've been following Bitcoin in the space since like 2011, 2012. So no one was talking about it back then. Like you occasionally heard like that story about the guy who spent 10,000 Bitcoins on a pizza or whatever. But like
Yeah.
that's it. You're like it's anomaly stories or someone losing their crazy wallet. But now it's actually you hear the institutions investing. You hear it constantly on any kind of business like news network talking about it, talking about like their Bitcoin investment. Things like J.P. Morgan or something like that was saying like you should have a 1% allocation to Bitcoin, and like all these digital assets, whether it's like in the crypto space or just digital commerce, like it's just becoming more the norm and just in part more part of society. And I think this last year with COVID just kind of just accelerated that, which was going to happen anyway.
Yeah, what I get worried about, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is like there's what happened in the last year, right? Is you had this forced adoption, and if you got a little background noise, Quinn is eating some lunch, so he's going bananas. He's getting like real food now, so he's going crazy for it.
Go for it.
But so you have this kind of forced adoption of things that were going to become adopted in the mainstream anyway, right? So just more people shopping online, more people using Amazon, more people using delivery, those types of things. But then you have this other part of it where because you had stimulus checks, you had people that were kind of unemployed, you had more bored, you had a lot of people that were, didn't have anybody they were quarantining with. It was just them, right? Or they're quarantining with their
Yeah.
parents. And then you have things like Robinhood that eliminate commission trading, right? So like it used to in this just a funny story. Like when I first started investing, because I really love trading. I've really been into it. If I didn't do the entrepreneur thing, I probably would have went the investment banking route. That's what, like all my friends from high school and college, they work on Wall Street.
Much of mine as well. Yeah, same.
And so I kind of lived vicariously through them over the years and would just talk shop and all that stuff. But like when I was, 18 or so and just starting to like have my own account, starting to trade more frequently, I remember my dad having to tell me one day, he was like, like every time you're buying and selling Apple and stuff, like you're paying, $8 or $9 to do that. And you're buying like $100 at a time. And that means you need to have like a 9% return just to break even. And I was
Cover
like,
it. Yeah.
I was like, I'm an idiot. And so, but like you eliminate that and you get a lot of people that really, maybe don't have the experience and knowledge kind of diving in, and you have asset classes that maybe shouldn't be priced where they're priced, but there's so much demand and limited supply that you have prices moving up, whether it's stocks, whether it's real estate, whether it's crypto. So I guess like what I'm getting at is like, do you think it's a net positive or like a net negative or like neutral kind of what's happened the last year?
On like the trading and stuff, it's been really interesting to watch. Like I was never in finance like that. My investment strategy, which thankfully worked out for me, I don't know if it's the best, but it's worked, was always just stick to what I know. Like, so I invest in like Google, like Facebook, like at companies that like Snapchat, companies that I knew like their trajectory and I work with them actively so I know where they're going. But like, I mean, the past like year, well, first of all, it's like 2017 too. Like people like this is when I used to saw people like saying they were taking out mortgages on their house to buy Bitcoin when it was at 20,000, and then Bitcoin crashed to like 3,000, and everyone panicked, sold, lost their upside, obviously lost all their money. I'm worried about this happening now. Like hopefully, like I've never invested in Bitcoin. I hope it doesn't go anywhere, and all these stocks that are rallying like crazy. But the thing that I'm worried about is like, one, a lot of it doesn't seem to make a ton of sense. And two, like the education side of that, like a bunch of my friends started buying as well who like that were not in the finance space. And I was explaining to them like how taxes work. Like they didn't realize, they thought it was all capital gains, but like when they're buying and selling quickly, I'm like, no, you better save money aside for those taxes because they're going to add up quick. So there's like a lack of education combined with prices just literally just not making sense. I mean, between the GameStops of the world and like all the meme stocks, like the people are just buying into, and now Doge, like it's literally just makes no sense what's going on. Definitely enjoying it. I'm partaking for sure, but it's definitely, I mean, someone's gonna be holding the bag at the end of the day when everything, like, it's not gonna go up endlessly. And I just hope people are covering their, like, are selling on the way up, or at least setting like stop losses of some sorts, because it's people are gonna be in for a rude awakening when stuff crashes.
Yeah, I think people forget that there's cycles, right? And like the cycles might, if you look over time, it's a net increase, right? So that it's kind of moving up each time. The baseline is moving up each time, but that's what I worry about too. And when I think about like opportunities, right? Because obviously we're as entrepreneurs, we see problems, we're looking at like what are solutions for them. That's a huge one, is how do you bring education to the masses on really important things that don't get taught in normal, kind of the normal education system, right? And investing's a big one. People that don't, you have these 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, even like sick. I have like, I know 16-year-olds that are like, in like want to have a Robinhood account. They have their parents, signing on and stuff and want to buy, but they don't understand, capital gains in general, but they also don't understand the difference between, hey, buying and selling in under a year versus holding. Like taxes are different. They don't understand like things go in cycles. They don't understand that, hey, there's what's happening with our monetary system of continuing to print money. I've talked to the stat multiple times, but like 25% of all the dollars that were printed and printed in the last year, like those things have impact. Right, like it might not be this year or next year, but eventually you can't just keep doing this and things just keep going up. There is always going to be a pullback.
For sure, and touching your earlier point, like like financial literacy, there's a lot of startups and company like influence people started to come up in the space and talk about it, which I always thought was super important, and I never understood that like everything from taxes to like interest rates, like they don't really teach in high school, and like when you turn 18 is when you start getting hit up for credit cards. Because soon as you're 18, you're eligible. And so many people put themselves in so much debt outside of just student loans, of course, but like when they put them, also understand that is super important too. But like they put themselves in debt from credit cards. Oh, free money, I'll pay it back later. But no, there's interest on that. They don't understand how those interest rate works. And then when they're doing these like stock trade, like, oh, I got to pay taxes. I'll just like, and then just how does that work? They don't know. So it becomes definitely a little dangerous. And then like when stock, like, and then they like don't understand how like they should be investing. Like if they do believe in a stock long term and it drops, like they'll panic sell generally instead of cost averaging down, or continuously buying to like a continuously cost average down. So like everyone, like my friends that are in the space are like, want to buy crypto or something like that. I'm like, they're like, should I buy? It's high. Do I buy? I'm like, first of all, I never advise what to buy or sell. I just tell them just do a weekly buy and don't think about it.
Yeah, and that's, so I mean, the most consistent kind of strategy is what you're talking about, which is, hey, if you like a stock or like some type of investment opportunity, it's, you should like it at this price, like you should continue, if your thesis is correct, right? And you believe in the thesis that this company in 5 years, 10 years is going to be a lot more valuable and it's growing, you should be buying, whether it's weekly or monthly or quarterly, right? So that way, when it drops 25%, you're not selling. You're saying, hey, that's a great opportunity to buy. I can buy in. If I like buying it at this price, I should love it at 25% discount. And the same thing, as it's going up, you can be buying it. So your actual cost over time ends up being a lot lower, or reinvesting your dividends, right? There's so many things to do there that leverage compounding.
And also like, exactly. And also just not like the best advice, like that I always tell people is just don't invest what you can't afford to lose. If you're in the market, like it's most likely not going to go to zero, whatever you're investing in. So you might not going to lose everything, but like crypto, like a lot of crypto can go to like next to nothing. People are buying all these like random altcoins. Like I see new one popping up every day. People are putting a ton of money in it because it's like, it's cheap. So that means it can go up, but like there's no like market for it. Why would it go up? Not everything is an anomaly like Doge.
Yeah, I guess that's the other big thing. Like just talking about that is like, when you're thinking about all this crypto stuff, how are you viewing when you decide? Because obviously you said earlier, hey, I wasn't like an expert in it, but I decided to get into it. How are you viewing investments there? And again, like none of the stuff we're saying here is financial advice for anybody, just so everyone's aware of that. This is just talking opinion. The way I'm looking, like I can just share first, is like I almost view it as like angel investing. The way I'm looking at it, it's like if there's a token for a technology that I think is really interesting and disruptive, whether it's some type of decentralized finance application that for lending money, or like there's some interesting things that like I view, and almost the same I would view as like a really cool startup opportunity, right? To get in early. And again, like those opportunities are super risky. If you're going to be a seed investor in a startup, the chance of that making money is slim. The chance of you losing all your money is much, much higher. I'm curious if like you view it similar, or how you're deciding to make investments.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely how I view it as well. Because like just like the risk of seed investing, to your point, like it's very hard to see liquidity with seed investments and actually get your money, get anything out, let alone make money. It's like it should be investing. Like if you're looking at these, like you're going deep into the crypto space, we should look at the utility of it and like who the founding team is behind it. And it's all pretty transparent. You can understand they have the roadmaps usually outlined, the utility for it. Personally, like I mean, that's what got me really into Bitcoin back in like 2011, 2012. I saw the use case for it of like I forgot what government it was, like I think it was Cyprus, something like that. Anyone that had over $500,000, they just took the money right out of their bank accounts. I saw a need for people to send money to their home countries easily outside of just Western Union. So I saw the utility there for Bitcoin. It made sense. That's why I invested in Bitcoin. The same thing with Litecoin. With the sorry, not Litecoin. I mined Litecoin, but I don't even know why I did that, to be honest. But Ethereum, I saw like a smart contract application, seemed like made a ton of sense. And like I look at what, like if I'm looking into the space, I'm generally looking at the team behind it and what the actual utility is, versus just like this is a lot of hype, because then you're effectively chasing a market because it could crash to next to nothing in a day. And I've seen so many companies, like we've met with them, like for my agency with Juice, we met a few different companies that like when we met them, they had like a $10 billion market cap or something crazy. And then a few, like I checked them out like a year later or 2 years later now, and they're down to like 50 million. which is like not nothing, but like when you go from
That's
billions to
insane.
to the millions, it's a big jump, big difference. But if you're investing that, 90 whatever percent of your money's gone.
Yeah, that's a lot of volatility, right? I think it's understanding to be diversified and look at like anything you're putting into the space. Expect incredible volatility that you wouldn't get in most other asset classes. I guess
Yeah.
the other thought I had, and somebody that's you're seeing so many disruptive technologies, you're seeing really cool companies and startups on a regular basis. Like, what are your thoughts on trying to figure out the best way to word this? I feel like our technology and innovation is moving faster now than society has the ability to catch up to it. And so much disruption is happening that is so transformative and should be like a net benefit, but there are so many people that it's like they don't even understand what's changed because they never experienced what it was really before, because they're like, for the Robinhood stuff, for example, like commission free trading, and it can cause just kind of havoc in a short period of time while there's that period where kind of you're reskilling and you're kind of adopting to it. I'm curious if like one, what just general thoughts on that, and then two, like,
Yeah.
do you see it continuing? I see it continuing to speed up, which is kind of scary. Like, it's not going to slow down.
Yeah.
If anything, we're going to keep getting crazier and crazier technologies that are harder and harder to maybe understand and more disruptive to big systems that we've come to like depend on daily, whether it's banking, whether it's kind of our government systems, whether it's healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, the rate of technology is not going to slow down. I might be completely butchering this, but I think it's like Moore's law. I believe it is. That's
Yep.
like everything gets like twice as fast and like half the price or something like. I've totally butchered it, but it's definitely applicable. And like you can see it like anecdotally. Like I always just think like taking like a month or two off like on vacation sounds great, but I feel like so much happens in a month or two now, and that rate just going to keep increasing. And it's almost like overwhelming when you see the amount of stuff being developed, and more people are getting access. Like thankfully, more people are getting access to the internet, general technologies, computers, like on a daily basis, smartphones. And programming becomes easier. Like the programming becomes more accessible to more people as like no code and stuff advances. So the rate of like companies launching on the online space, which gives more room for people, like give more access to more people. So you're going to see more types of innovation. I don't see it slowing down, and I don't know how we like as a society kind of get used to that, because like just when we're getting used to something, the next step kicks in and advances further. So it really just it's almost like exhausting just keeping up with everything going on.
Yeah, and I think what you end up happening, have happening is this battle, which I think we're already kind of seeing, but I see it continuing to escalate between legacy institutions, legacy infrastructure, and kind of the future, right? So you kind of saw that happen and play out with music. Like that happened when streaming became a thing, like the early days of Napster, and then the all the label, everyone had to adapt, but there was a lot of fighting before the labels kind of finally said like, okay, like this is the future, we're not going to fight it anymore. I think you're going to see the same thing now happening with governments and cryptocurrency, right? It's like if you're a world government, if you're the U.S. government or China, like your ability to control the currency and the money is your single biggest power. Yeah, that's gives you so much power. It's like I control the monetary system, right? And
Yeah.
so if you lose the ability to control that and lose transparency, that's terrifying. If you're, I'd imagine, a career politician. So I see this battle playing out over the next few years or next few decades potentially between even and then like legacy media, right? You have legacy media fighting and trying to keep viewership versus you have Daily Wire, and you have all these kind of new media companies that are built of like taking a bunch of podcasts and influencers and creating media companies out of them, right?
I mean, you have all the TV companies making their own have like 50 new streaming networks out right now, like Paramount, everyone just launched or
Paramount
whatever,
Plus, they're all
Disney,
bundled. Yeah,
everything.
everything's a
Yeah.
bundle.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the legacy companies are going to keep trying to keep up. They're probably going to do some acquisitions, of course, to stay relevant. But the rate of like it's like the term that was just like the buzzword like that everyone just kept saying like like 12 years ago, whatever, was disrupt, like disrupting this, disrupting that, TechCrunch disrupt. But yeah, it's everything's just being disrupted, and it never like felt like anything was truly being disrupted. Just like, oh, innovation in the space, but until actually now, it feels like things are actually starting to get disrupted. Whether it's like to your point, like the financial institutions and government within currencies with crypto, streaming services with music or TV, and things like the rate of all these startups coming out and companies that are doing such drastic innovation in the spaces is forcing this actual disruption. And I feel like now is a time where it's actually like truly things are like the buzzword. It's not a buzzword anymore. Things are actually getting disrupted, which I think is just like interesting to watch because it's instead of pushing back like for the longest time, like all these companies, legacy companies were just pushing back and trying to stuck in their old ways. And now they're actually saying, oh, we actually should make moves on this and, either acquire or adapt.
Yeah, and hopefully it's more them trying to adapt and less acquisition, because that's the other mega trend you've seen this year is consolidation and acquisition and increase in market share, right? It's like if I was Jeff Bezos and I was him back in the day, like with that table on his desk, like the old school like office, right? Amazon office,
all this stuff everywhere.
Yeah, and he's brainstorming and saying like, here's the perfect scenario. If this happened and I could control this would be the greatest thing in the world for my company. Like, I'm not saying he said this or thought this, right? Obviously. But like a massive pandemic that forces the entire world to go inside their house and not leave their house is just about the single greatest thing that could happen to a company like Amazon, right? It's like, It's the perfect storm there.
It's like 50 million customers signed up for Prime. I think crazy number like that.
It's nuts. It was so nuts. It was like, things are crazy when you have Mackenzie Bezos. Well, Mackenzie Scott now, like she was giving away so much money, like insane amounts of money. And she ended up the year with more money because Amazon stock is appreciated. Like, that's crazy to think about, giving away billions and billions and billions of dollars, and you can't. It just grows faster than you can give it away.
I mean, they were perfect. It's like it was just right time, right place. Like obviously, it was COVID is terrible and everything going on, but for Amazon, it was perfect timing. It was like the best possible catalyst for them for growth. People are stuck at home, they want things quickly. Amazon Prime. It's consistently talked about. It's consistently in people's minds that Amazon, like for all thing e-commerce store, that you can go in and buy anything. That's why like my grandmother like literally just is on her iPad, no idea what she's doing like on the thing, but operates Amazon seamlessly. Like she orders all the time now, and now like that was like I was saying earlier, it's just a catalyst. Like if they're not going anywhere, it's like now she sees the ease of use, and I'm sure she's gonna start exploring other apps and other like digital e-commerce like properties that she can buy from, whether it's Walmart or whatever else, eBay perhaps. But I think it just opens up this marketplace to so many more people, and obviously I think Amazon's like the gateway drug to the rest of them. But I think it's an easy entry point for people that don't know, like that aren't as prone to be ordering online or just sifting around the internet.
Yeah. So where's the opportunity today? Like, this is what I think a lot about, and again, just giving your perspective, which is interesting, having the you work with a lot of brands, you invest in brands, you have this really interesting perspective, and you're just really plugged into the community. Like, it seems like there are certain pockets where it is just so consolidated, and the market share it's owned by like, let's look at e-commerce for example. It's really hard to, if you said I want to enter this as a marketplace, or I want to enter this as a logistics play. Like, it's to try to compete with Amazon or Shopify seems impossible. Or I want to compete in search, right? It's like, how do you compete in search today when you have Apple and Google, basically all devices are them, and Google pays Apple $12 billion a year to be the default search engine. So Google's basically the default search engine on every device. Like, how do you compete with that? So I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to niching down. Like for the search example, like I was actually pretty blown away when I saw the numbers like of DuckDuckGo, which like their whole thing was privacy, which is a little funny because it's Apple's whole thing now. But DuckDuckGo, I think it had like 10% market share, something like a decent chunk, which more like even 5 I've heard it. It was a good sized market share for a company that I don't really think about, and I think I saw commercials for them recently as well, and like at home advertising. So niching down is a super good way to break in, because if you're trying to do the everything store and compete with Amazon, like good luck, unless you have crazy amount of money. But even still, like you're competing against people's habits at that point, and it's what they're comfortable with. So like niching down, where like if you have a marketplace for something very specific, whether it's like CBD or whatever else you want to sell, something that there's a lot of opportunity things that Amazon doesn't let you sell, so you can compete with that. But it's a lot of brands that we're seeing that are actually doing well right now and launching are either niching down, or they're finding like really unique value props, and they're tapping into like pain points or areas of great importance to people, like whether it's eco-friendly, for example. Like we've seen a big surge in people that are actively searching and buying from companies that are eco-friendly, like recycled, like we have a luggage company called Solgar, which is like recycled plastics into luggage. And they make other products as well. Like people, you're tapping into a need, and you're tapping into something people are actively seeking. But if you're just launching another suitcase company, chances are you're probably just blending with the crowd, and you're not going to stand out, and it's really hard to grow.
Do you think just on the suitcase trend, like how's that company doing? Are they, because I know like for example Away, which is they were the kind of the big player in the space. They had all the money, and,
Yeah.
and we have Away suitcases. We love them. But like they took a massive hit. Like when I forget they had to pull back dramatically because their
It was the
burn was so
first
high.
time I ever saw Way do a sale. I think it was the only time they've ever done a sale.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone in that related space obviously took a big hit, but it's actually making a good resurgence now. People are looking to they're antsy to get out, they're getting vaccinated, stuff is opening up, so that market is actually starting to grow a lot right now. Not quite the numbers where they were previously, but they're definitely actively growing pretty strong. But yeah, it's a lot of industries were hurt pretty bad last year, but it was really interesting to see the ones that actually really took off. We like obviously like as like Juice, we have a marketing agency, we work with a lot of different, mostly D2C brands, and it was concerning to see, like 'cause no one knew what was going to happen last year. The fact that we had the resurgence of like the economy, like still is crazy to me. But a lot of people thought their businesses were just going to go under. But then we worked with a lot of like food and beverage brands, and they had all-time record high numbers because people were inside, they're at home, they wanted food, they wanted to try new things, and they were ordering online. Anything with like home entertainment, and like there's a lot of different areas that grew a lot over the last year, and I don't really see them slowing down either. Like people are more prone to like order new food companies online. Like previously, like it was a little bit of a struggle getting people to buy online, because obviously you remove like the most important like senses, taste and smell, when you're shopping online versus going to the supermarket, like samples or anything. So it made people, I think, more curious and more accepting of trying new things online.
Yeah, it is the beauty of forced adoption is that it can change behavior that's really hard to change. Right? So there's just certain behaviors that take a long time to change. People are very resistant to changing their ways. Like people, I like going to the grocery store, and I like walking, and I like feeling things. It's well, when you're stuck at
Yeah.
home for 3 months and you have to order, on Instacart or whatever, you be like, this isn't so bad, right? They do a pretty good
Yeah.
job, and it's nice. I get to stay home, and it comes to me, and I don't have to worry about it, right? So you see the other side of it, and it's interesting seeing the different markets and kind of verticals that either shrunk dramatically because they were kind of dependent on legacy behaviors, like people that kind of stuck to this because it's the way they did it forever, and then all the new stuff that's just taken off because people had no choice to do it.
Forced adoption. Yeah.
Yeah, as the quarantine thing, as a marketer, I'm curious what your thoughts are on like if you had told me even a year and a half or 2 years ago, right? Like we are going to tell the entire country and pretty much the entire world that you got to stay inside your home for 3 months. If you're in California or certain other states, it could be longer than that. You have to basically let your businesses close your businesses and kind of let your businesses just implode, and like voluntarily like abide by that. It was amazing to me how quickly and receptively people did. Obviously, there was a lot of pushback eventually, but like
Yeah.
out of the gate, it was pretty interesting to me. Like it seems like such a no brainer thing now. People wear masks, people do these things, but like that was a crazy big thing to require everybody to do. And I was blown away. Like,
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Like, good point. I mean, I uh, I remember like yeah, was it like March when the lockdown started
yeah,
last year? I think people just thought it would be like a week and 2 weeks. I think that's the only like that's the reason that people were more receptive because like oh we'll be home for a week or two, not a big deal. It's like yeah, we're gonna extend a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and keep extending. So I think if they would have said last year like you're gonna be locked down for a year, I think there'd been a little bit more pushback at the beginning. But the fact that it was like no one knew what was going on, there's a lot of unknowns across the board. So like we didn't know. I don't think anyone truly knew how long we're going to be locked down for. But I think that made it more receptive to people than like the blow of hey, you're going to be at home for a year. Hey, your business is going to be closed for 8+ months, whatever it is, depending on the state you're in.
yeah.
But
It's kind
yeah,
of, it was like the lobster and the boiling water, right? It's like you don't throw them in the water when it's boiling. You slowly turn it hotter and hotter and hotter, and all of a sudden you don't realize it, and you're boiling.
exactly. Yeah, morbid way to look at it, but yeah,
Yeah, it's a super morbid way, but it was the only example I could think of. Where I was trying to think of
no, it
another
makes
way,
sense.
like how do you transition somebody? What's a good analogy that I can use there? Um, it is crazy, like how what it showed me at least is just how powerful fear is. Like fear is the ultimate motivator, right? It's either you're running away from something, you're running towards something. Those are really the two primal kind of drivers and why we do things, why we buy things, and that hook is strong. And I feel like I don't know if you see this or feel this, but I feel like there are some companies, industry sectors that are kind of got hooked on that, like that kind of drug of like fear and how much that drives business, and like are continuing to push it even as things are getting better. Obviously, things aren't perfect. Obviously, there's still you know, just flare ups are still going to be, you know, this is not going away, but it does seem like just like a generalization, right? You look at like them, you know, kind of legacy media, and you look at their just pure from like a business standpoint. Like look at their numbers financially over the last few years. Like they've made more money across the board than ever before. Like the subscriber rates are massive for New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Like their readership is up. Obviously, it's taken a hit since Trump left office because that was a big driver for them, and I'm sure
For sure.
they're sad that it. Actually, let's stop. We don't have to talk like super politics, but I'm curious. Like,
Yeah.
it is a weird thing. I'm like Matt Taibbi's Hate Inc. is a really good book that talks. He's like you know ex journalist who kind of talks about just how all media like after Reagan got rid of the fairness doctrine and they realized like we can just you know have opinion and make it news. Like we can make a lot more
Yeah.
money by causing people to hate the other side. It's a weird thing. Like when you see the numbers on the back end of like how much money, you know, everyone made, like CNN, MSNBC, Fox, across the board, the full spectrum, how much money
Yeah.
people made over that four
Leveraging fear
years.
and anger.
But like saying how much you despise a human being, but how addicted you are to that human being. Like it's a very weird thing to watch from the outside. Like you hate this guy and you say he's the worst thing ever. You've also made
You
more
can't turn
money
away.
than ever. And you know you could just stop
Years.
covering him. You could just say like let's take the fire and just stop putting oxygen on the fire and just let it fizzle out because he's a showman. He needs it. It was just they were addicted. Like these two groups came together and they just needed each other to keep going.
Yeah, it yeah, it was super interesting because like people that like in like anecdotally I saw people around me like people that were fans of Trump like wouldn't stop talking about him. People that hated him wouldn't stop talking about him. So the news is like obviously just perpetuating that because they're gonna say like if you look at one side it's like can you believe he did this? That's the worst thing in the world. The other side it's like what a hero he did that. So like they're obviously playing to their audiences and leveraging that. And I think to your point like both like right-leaning and left-leaning media publications are probably bummed that he's gone just because it was such a driver of viewership and impressions. So I'm sure they're always trying to find the next thing to talk about. But yeah, it's interesting like the relationship they have with like people like the super polarizing figures like that. But they're not like keep and it's a lot of it's like I was saying fear and anger based. So which is both powerful drivers because it gets someone worked up in either regard, whether it's worked up in excitement or worked up at like, or worked up in like fear, like this guy's gonna end the world, or like they get a fear like when the election cycle comes around, like Joe Biden's gonna, you know, do whatever. But yeah, it's very polarizing, very good at like the clickbaity stuff that they do, and then like verbal clickbait almost that would get you watch their publications online, their videos. Um, but yeah, I mean, fear works across the board though, like in advertising in general. Like, yeah, there's like it's like fear to get you to purchase something, or the other side of fear, like FOMO, which I feel like is a big catalyst for a lot of things that are like launching now. Like I don't know, like Clubhouse, for example, like that really just took off because all FOMO. Because people like this invite only is exclusive and it plays in people's emotions like, oh, it's exclusive, I got to be in it. Like, fear, FOMO, fear of missing out, different type of fear. But marketers play with emotion all the time, as I'm sure you know. Like it's just to get someone to feel like you're not missing out, feel like it's something you need to have. And yeah, it's a little manipulative, but it definitely drives the clicks.
Do you think about that as as just from a personal standpoint? Because I've been thinking about it now more, especially now that I'm like a dad, and I feel like I feel like I'm a more grown up person and I have more responsibilities, and I have now like a little thing that looks up to me. Like I wonder if the reporters, journalists, people that run the media companies, people like us in kind of corporate American marketers, business owners stuff, um, wrestle with this of saying, here's I know exactly what I could do and say to make more money, but I also know that doing and say those things could mess with people's heads. It could cause issues, right? Like I know the reason we don't do much in education anymore is because I got so tired of like there's opportunity in info products and there's like training, and the opportunity is where all the money's made, the biz op and all that stuff. Like I know exactly how to sell a ton of shit in there. Like I could easily go into my garage, I could show our cars, I could show watches, I could do it. It's easy. Like I can just do
Yeah.
that, make you want what I have, and I can sell you a ton of shit. I just choose not to do it because I hate it. It's not authentic. It's not who I am, and it's incredibly manipulative, and it makes people think that they can actually have those things by buying a course, right? And it's just that's ridiculous. And the same thing with marketing copy. It's like you could leverage certain tactics to push somebody this direction. I'm curious, like how do you deal with that? How do you do that kind of ballet in your head of deciding what to use, what not to use?
Yeah, I mean, definitely push the moral compass. Like to your point, like the courses earlier, like a few years ago, like I was debating doing that. Like I honestly just wanted to launch a course because I saw all these people being like, you can launch a drop shipping store and make $1 million overnight. Look how easy it is. Look at my cars. And like to your point, like, it's not that hard to launch a course, like do something like that and get the marketing, show like like all the money that people could be making. But obviously, like you and I both know that's wrong. Like it's a lot of work that goes into it. It's not just a fly by night, like make a bunch of money. They're making money selling courses. They're not making money from their stores. So like the courses, like that whole, like I always avoided courses for that reason. I try to put out content like online every now and then to just be helpful, but I don't like, I wouldn't personally sell it. Just because everything I've learned online, I just like either read online that someone left out for free, or like I just experimented myself. So I never like went the courses route. As far as like the marketing stuff goes, uh, I think there's like a fine line, just because like if you're selling people thing like your family is like something horrible is going to happen to your family if you don't buy this or something like that, or like, oh my God, this like the next pandemic's around the corner, buy this to stay safe. Like even like during the pandemic, like when it was like in peak time, I saw people that like marketers that like we both know that were selling copper laced masks saying that would kill COVID. I'm like, yo, like that's not how copper works with viruses. You need direct contact for a period of time. And that's something like I can never get behind, is like any kind of scaling products. Cause like if people like are spending their hard earned dollars on something, I want like something I can actually get behind. Like if someone comes to us like a juice, like a product that like seems kind of scammy, like we'll never take it on. Like we're always hesitant to even take on any kind of drop shipping stores because I know it makes for generally a bad user experience from like the customer's perspective. So it's something that we always like talk about internally, especially at our agency, is like making sure like copy is not like too like over the top and scammy. Like want to make sure that we can drive clicks, but honest clicks. That like actually the people that would, if this is a product that would be helpful for you and something that you'd be interested in, let's get you on the site. But we're not going to trick you into coming if something doesn't apply to you. So definitely is a fine line that like people need to tap into the moral compass a little more when they're doing their marketing.
Yeah, you mean you don't run a landing page that's a rip of foxnews.com with a product for making money? That was one of the best. We saw that back in the day in 2016 when we had our Trump point offer. We had people presenting us with all kinds of, affiliate offers to run to our list. And that was one of them. It was like, and there was not just one, there was a bunch like that, but it was literally
I'm
like
sure it crushed it too.
foxnews.com. And it was written from an
Yeah.
article of like President Trump reveals his secret to building wealth. And it was like, some dude that had a course on, trading or some shit like that. And
Yeah, I mean, these people doing this don't even like understand the concept of trademark infringement, but that's another issue in itself.
yeah, it's, and I would say that it's, it used to be more of the Wild West. It's definitely, there's more shit happening from a legal perspective of people getting cracked down on and more enforcement on a lot of this stuff, whether it's like forced continuity, whether it's, like trademark infringement on these, landing pages you're doing, whether it's using celebrity endorsements that, haven't given you permission. So it's definitely, you're rolling the dice more today trying to do that stuff than you were maybe in
Oh, for sure.
2014,
The legal
2015.
lawyers are catching up. I mean, there's everything from the trademark side to uh, uh, even like ADA like stuff popping up now, which is pretty ridiculous. All the ADA compliance stuff that's coming around. I don't know if you ever experienced that kind of like those lawyers that come around, but if your site's not ADA compliant, which is like
Yeah.
alt text and like things you would never think about. Like lawyers are coming in hot now, and they're not shy anymore.
Nope. They see opportunities to build a class action or get money out of you. They're gonna do it. The other side of this, like, which I was curious to get your thoughts on, two things. So one is it's more just like the hypocrisy and kind of moral standards. So one, I want to get your thoughts just at a high level on everything happening between like Apple, Facebook, just big tech trying to eat itself and fight itself for for the future. That's one part, but the other part is like the moral side of it. That's the thing I'm more interested in is like seeing these big companies using their hugely expensive kind of Madison Avenue PR companies to run these campaigns of like we're doing this because of some
For
moral,
the small
ethical
business.
reason, right? So you have
Yeah.
Facebook saying we do it for the small business while simultaneously just shutting down ad accounts all the time with no explanation, breaking all the like just the worst. And then you have Apple,
Yeah.
saying we're doing this for privacy, we care about users, we care about protecting everything, while they're simultaneously manufacturing their phones in like basically sweatshops in China with suicide nets around the side. They're like it's hard to like if you know what's going on, or even just like Apple taking 12 billion from Google. Like if you really care about privacy, you just wouldn't take the money from Google because you'd say, well, we don't agree with the way you make money. You're saying we don't agree with the way Facebook makes money because they sell data. It's like, but over here they're paying us 12 billion a year, so we will. They don't make all their money from it, so we'll look this way. It's fascinating to me. It's like in just seeing that as like watching everything happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's like from the Facebook, like it is interesting because Facebook's doing like a PR move, like we're helping small businesses, like that's their angle. Like obviously, like their angle is like it's going to hurt their ads. Like that's what all they care about because it's their biggest form of revenue. Um, I do like it. Apple always like for a while now, it's had a good stance on privacy. So I get where they're coming from. Obviously, like the irony of them, like with all their sweatshops and everything, it's like they should be working on improving themselves as well because like that's an awful thing to have. But yeah, from the Facebook side, like I like I'm kind of in the boat of like that. I obviously selfishly want like iOS 14 to not exist with the privacy side because like from targeting part perspective, it's great, and I want to make sure that I can have relevant ads targeting to the right people and the correct kind of attribution. But I mean, with all there's so many different companies like collecting data, like getting rid of Facebook, it'll obviously protect some data, but the amount of data being collected constantly across the board, like people don't realize like every time they swipe their credit card, that's being recorded and that data is being sold. Like regardless if you click cool, like you click someone on Facebook, I know you went to that website. Great. But what about all about the traveling you're doing on Google? Like there's so many different apps that are tracking your activity and tracking and different things you don't think about. They're tracking everything you're doing. That I don't think Facebook's having the biggest impact on data collection. Obviously, it's a massive source of it, But removing Facebook, I don't think is going to change your day to day. Everything you're doing is still being monitored, whether it's on-site monitoring, like monitoring, like or in person. Like it's everything. All the data is still being collected, still being stored into like an ID to whatever the ID is developed for you. That's why there's a lot of like I heard of companies coming out now that are actually throwing off like fake data just to make it look so like just to kind of throw people off your trail a bit, which I think is actually pretty cool innovation coming out. Again, crappy for a marketer, but cool for data perspective. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think people just like the general population doesn't realize the amount of data that's being collected on them on a consistent basis, and they're just too focused on Facebook.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, in my opinion, the ship sailed. Like the idea that we can ever go back to, you can never go back to being like private is a fantasy. Like I don't care if you're Apple, Amazon, like nobody's big enough to put that genie back in the bottle, right? Like that, those are private companies. Talk about the government, world governments, you know, China, America, like it's done. Like you go anywhere. Side note here, it's a joke that we tell. Like you think of how crazy it is that like back in like the Western times, right? You know, they used to have the wanted signs and stuff everywhere. Like you're wanted for a robbery. Like how bad of a criminal do you think you had to be to get arrested back then? Like nowadays it's anywhere, anything you do, you're instantly tracked. There's cameras everywhere. There's no way you get away with a crime nowadays. But like I think about back in like Western times, back in like 1600s, 1400s, like either they were just arresting a bunch of the wrong people and like hanging the wrong people who kind of look the same, or they were just like the worst criminals in history who would just like not flee town and just like hang out and like shave their mustache. I always thought that was interesting.
Put their hat back, but yeah, it's yeah. I mean, without like, yeah, I've watched all those random like true crimes kind of shows, and just thinking like how the forensics everything is now versus then, like, and how much data is being collected with facial recognition and everything versus back then, like you just have eyewitnesses and just wear a mask or something and no one will know who you are. But yeah, it's versus today where you have like so many different forms of data that built on you, like forensics, like the fingerprinting, face tracking, like shoes, like everything, like whatever thing like yeah.
It's nuts. But yeah, so I agree. I think that it's the people don't have an idea maybe with the volume of data and the extent of how much is being tracked by everybody. I think a lot of it has to do with positioning, right? It's like it's been positioned to the public as data collection is a bad thing, right? When people collect your data and use your data, it's for malicious reasons, it's for bad reasons, and I don't. The narrative hasn't been controlled by the other side, right? So there's other side that can also can make valid arguments that, hey, the world has gotten a lot better for people and easier for people because of all the data you share, right? Everything from the news you receive to your recommendations on Netflix to like there's so many positives, your healthcare, like there's a lot of things that come out of having lots of data and being able to personalize things. So it's interesting that it's very one-sided right now of like most people's view on data.
I mean, I forgot that movie that came out not long ago that everyone was talking about.
The Netflix one.
Talking like, yeah, and I feel like everyone just talking the negative side of it, where it's like, oh my god, they're collecting all this data, and like, obviously this is an extreme example, but like Apple has the Apple Watch, is consistently collecting data on your health and everything about you on a consistent basis, and Apple's keeping that. Like, I guess you trust Apple, so it's okay, but it's feeding you back information to help you improve your health. Like an extreme example of that is like Facebook's collecting all this data, but if they're not doing it to like be malicious, they're doing it so they can give you better ads that are more relevant to you. So they can have something like, if you like, for like, it would show me like something like with dogs related, because I know I have a dog and I click on dog related stuff. But like if it showed me like, I don't know, like going back to college or something like that, like not relevant to me, not interested in it. So like, why would you waste your ad dollars, which effectively hurts the business that's advertising, and waste my time that I'm not going to click on something and like, these are all relevant. So, I mean, I to your point, like, I don't think anyone's like looked at it from the other perspective and flipped that positioning. It doesn't have to be malicious. It could be scary because you don't really understand it. It could sound very scary. It's like, oh my God, my data's out there. But like, who cares what you like, what ad you clicked on, what meme pages you liked? I mean,
that's the big thing. It's like, my viewpoint was always, and people disagree with this, but like, I don't care if people try, like, I'm not breaking laws. I'm not doing anything bad. Like, I'm not worried about somebody showing up at my door, like because I liked a dog post or something. I'm not concerned, right? And and I think like the worst thing that happens by Petco being able to follow you off of Facebook is that they know what type of dog you might have, and they can can deliver better ads, and they can find more people like you that deliver ads to them. So it's, I guess and I know we're up on the hour here, so to kind of bring this together, I'm curious, like, where do you think we go from here? Because I think we've already built this infrastructure on the idea of like modern internet, and the modern economy is built around the idea that most stuff is free and data is the way you access that. And people have become so accustomed to that the idea that now you can kind of pull it back and be like, well, we want to control our data and pay for something. I think a lot of people say that they would do that. I think that in practice, into my opinion, doesn't work, because like the numbers, right, is like, if if it's $60 a year everyone has to pay to make up for Facebook's lost revenue for not selling ads. That's assuming that every active user is going to pay, which isn't the case, right? So then let's say you cut out 90% of them. Well, now it's not $60 a year. Now it's 6,000. It's 10,000, $20,000 a year, and you got more people not be able to pay that. So you eventually end up with like 1% of people that have the money that can afford to pay for this super private tool, but nobody's on it. So there's no value, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm curious, like, like routers, I think it's called routers. Whatever the magazine is, like, they went out like and put a paywall on their site this past week, and like they followed suit, like New York Times and everyone else doing it, which obviously is different than like a social network doing it, because traditional like media like was newspapers, you bought newspapers, now they had ad revenue, which ad revenue from publisher perspective, it's gone down year over year. So they need to make up the revenue somehow. So they started charging. Like, there's massive pushback on a news publication where people actively seek out and they go for their source of truth. So like, to get to be able to pay for a social network, I just don't see people doing that anytime soon, especially when they're so accustomed to free. And it's, I don't know. I feel terrible saying like like you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like, do you want to give up your data or do you want to pay? Because chances are you don't want to pay. So I don't foresee people wanting to pay when they're so used to having it free for so long. But again, it's kind of like they want their cake and they want to eat it too. Like, it's you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way, and I think eventually that's how I see this playing out. Is user experiences get so shitty, and it's like we lose like 10 years of progress on the internet because things get less targeted, and you see random ads for shit all over the place, and people are like, why is this happening? It's like, well, this is happening because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I'm curious that like anyone does come out on that flip side we were talking about a few moments ago, just like about talking about the non-malicious nature of data. Because like right now there's such distrust within, like, with Facebook in particular. Everyone's like, oh, Facebook ruined the election, Facebook did this, blah blah blah. And then the irony, of course, people are like, I'm quitting Facebook, I'm only using Instagram or WhatsApp. I'm like, oh, same company, but whatever. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Facebook that can change that narrative and positioning, but I'm curious if any other publications or anyone of trust comes out to explain the different perspectives of data collection.
Yeah, it's got to be somebody of like a Apple level of trust that comes out, that has super loyal fan base and customer base to explain it. And I don't know who that is, but we can, one can hope.
Like a Snowden of the world, but I doubt he would do it. But like someone of his caliber.
Yeah. A bizarro Snowden that comes in from an alternate reality that's really pro data collection. We can only pray and hope for that. Awesome, dude. Well, I know we're over, and I appreciate you hanging out for a few extra minutes. For anybody that's interested, that wants to learn more what Juice does, what you guys do, potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to follow you, contact you, learn more?
Yeah, so if you want to see our site, it's just thinkjuice.com. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter @Yo, on Instagram @Troy.
And whenever he says that, I was like, that's just like it's like a humble brag, just being able to say like, this is my handle on certain social media. That's how early of an adopter I was, right? It's like, I literally have a 2-letter word as my on Twitter.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, that's always so cool.
Thanks, man.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate it. It's always a blast getting to chat with you. Lots of great ideas, lots of fun stuff to talk about. We'll definitely have to do it again. Until the next time, thanks, guys. Have a great one. I'll see you next week.